Welcome everyone to the hearing of the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Friday, February 23rd, 2024, 2 p.m. in conference room 325 here at the State Capitol, and we're having this also by video conference. If you're testifying today via Zoom, if you're testifying today in person or via Zoom, I'd request you keep your testimony to about 2 minutes, and I'll ask you to summarize at that point. If you are testifying via Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off until you testify, and then after your testimony is done, please turn your video off and mute yourself at that time. You can use the Zoom chat function to communicate with technical staff for technical issues only. If you're disconnected, don't panic, just come back in as soon as you can, and I will try to fit you in to provide your testimony when you rejoin. If the power goes off in the building and we have to cancel the meeting, we will reschedule and we will post appropriate notice. If you're testifying on Zoom, please do not use any trademarked or copyrighted images. That kicks us off of YouTube, and that's a problem. And please conduct yourself with aloha. No profanity or uncivil behavior. Be nice. It's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We are working together for what's best for Hawaii. First up today, we have House Bill 2582, relating to critical infrastructure information. This measure excludes critical infrastructure information from disclosure requirements under the Uniform Information Practices Act, and some people may refer to it as UIPA. That's what that means. First up, we have testimony from the Hawaii State Energy Office. Welcome. Please proceed.
Chair, Vice Chair, Chris Yunker from the Hawaii State Energy Office will stand on our written testimony in support, and just know that the ready flow of information between the private sector and the state allows us to plan for emergency response and energy security from both a response and for planning and investment purposes. Thank you.
So you think the bill is a good idea?
Yes.
Okay.
We are in support.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony from the Department of Law Enforcement. Mr. Vincent, welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. The Department of Law Enforcement strongly supports this measure. This measure is very similar to the administration bill HB 2460, which protects the same information that the Office of Homeland Security has in its possession. This bill actually protects it regardless of what agency it's in. And so this bill kind of keeps somebody from going in another way, another direction to try and get this information. It's important that our critical infrastructure partners be able to share information with the agencies that need to work with them to help keep our communities safe and to keep them up and running. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Office of Information Practices, Director Cheryl Park. Welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Cheryl Kakazi Park, Director of the Office of Information Practices, or OIP. And we support the intent of this bill. We do not want our critical infrastructure to be attacked. However, the way the bill is written is overly broad. And so we suggest either that you go and follow what was already reported out by Waterland in House Bill 2460, House Draft 1, or if in this case you're talking about a specific exception for an agency, in this case the County Board of Water Supplies, we have written much more narrowly tailored, a proposal that's much more narrowly tailored, and it would continue to protect their critical infrastructure information while still allowing the public to have access to the records that they've historically had access to, things such as the annual reports, minutes, government employee information, water consumption data. Those have historically been available under the UIPA, but would be not available under this bill as it's currently written. So just before this hearing, I talked to the Board of Water Supply, Mr. Lau here, and his staff, and they have agreed, I think, to, they suggested some changes to the proposal that we attached to our testimony, minor changes that we could live with. It's nothing big. So if you want, I can provide that to you after the hearing.
Okay, or we may have some questions, so thank you for your testimony. Next, we have testimony from the Board of Water Supply. Mr. Lau, welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair and members. Ernie Lau, Manager for the Board of Water Supply in Honolulu. Yeah, I appreciate the OIP's testimony here, and we know we can live with changes where they narrowly adjust proposed changes to Chapter 54, which pertains to the county boards of water supply. I think this bill, though, as written 2582, kind of addresses the broader issues of critical infrastructure, which the Board of Water Supply also depends on, like for power to pump water. Without the electric utility being able to provide those services, safe and dependable water service to our community could be compromised. Some of the information that Director Park indicated would not be available. It's not quite true. The information about water consumption, water use, that kind of general information would still be available to the community. And the idea here is to protect critical infrastructure information that could lead to compromising the drinking water systems of the Board of Water Supply. I think the issue that faces all of us broadly as a community is the issue of there are bad people out there that are seeking to compromise critical infrastructure and disrupt and create chaos in our community. And Oahu being a location where military assets are concentrated within the state of Hawaii, especially on this island, there are active actions being taken by foreign states or other bad actors that are trying to compromise critical infrastructure. So we think there is definitely a need. How we go about the need, I understand the concerns of OIP of being overly broad as opposed to being more surgical, but definitely the need to protect information that could keep our critical infrastructure operating and safe for our community. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Hawaiian Electric. Mr. Abraham, please proceed on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is James Abraham. I'm testifying on behalf of Hawaiian Electric in strong support of House Bill 2582. We'll stand on our written testimony and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have testimony from the Public First Law Center. Welcome, Mr. Krebs.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Ben Krebs for the Public First Law Center. We respectfully oppose this measure for two principal reasons that's outlined in our written testimony. And first, our view is that this bill is unnecessary. Existing law already protects this type of information, the critical infrastructure information, from disclosure under the frustration of a legitimate government function exemption. So current law already protects this information. And also we have concerns about the technical drafting and certain terms being undefined and a very broad definition of what could be covered, and that leads to potential overuse or misapplication of the exemption. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And we received written testimony with comments from Corinne Solomon. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2582? If not, questions, members? I have a question for Ms. Park. You mentioned in your testimony that you would prefer the language in House Bill 2460 HD1. Does that accomplish, in your opinion, does that accomplish everything, what's needed to protect information related to critical infrastructure, including water?
Well, HB 2461 really applies to the Office of Homeland Security's program because they're getting all this information from other government agencies. So it's not Homeland Security's information. It's information that's provided to them by the Board of Water Supply or Hawaiian Electric or Energy Office, these other agencies. So that is needed for that purpose, to protect these agencies, other agencies' information from being disclosed. So that's the way we help to write that bill.
2460.
Right. So this bill actually applies to, the way we understand your intent to be. We wrote a proposal that is narrowly tailored for the Board of Water Supply, the county boards of water supply, and creates a confidentiality provision within their own statute. And that's one of the corrections we have to make. It's section 54-11. It doesn't
So,
affect,
so this is, so what you've drafted is actually different from HB 2460.
right, so it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you want to give the Board of Water Supply their own specific exception, that's what our proposal that we worked out with them would do. It gives them a special, recognizes a specific confidentiality provision for them. It doesn't change the UIPA, which, as the Public First Law Center points out, still has that frustration exception. So, information that would compromise the security of our state, I think would clearly be protected
Sure,
from
sure.
disclosure.
Okay, so your proposed HD1 really addresses the specifics of the Board
Right. It's
of Water Supply,
targeted
the Departments
for
of Water
them.
Supply.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And that's different than what
That's how it
HB
differs.
2460
Which was
HD1.
for Office of Homeland Security.
Got it. Okay,
Who doesn't have necessarily their own records to protect. They're getting it from everybody else.
okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lau? So you've reviewed the proposed HD1 and provided the correction that Ms. Park just described.
Yeah, we've, just outside, we kind of looked at it again and provided some suggested changes.
Okay.
Just kind of keep in mind, 2582 is actually broader, so this narrows it to address the county water departments, which serve over 90% of the population of the state of Hawaii.
Yeah, right, because the way the bill is written, it covers other critical infrastructure as well.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the drafters of the bill because I think it raises awareness about the issue of critical infrastructure, not only county-owned utilities, water, wastewater, but also private sector critical infrastructure. And that's something that I would just request the legislature to kind of look at addressing that because the threats are not going away. They seem to be actually increasing.
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to all the testifiers. Let's move on to the next measure. House Bill 1597 relating to open meetings. This provides a specific right of action to challenge decisions of the Office of Information Practices relating to the state's open meetings law, aligns the enforcement mechanisms for the state's open meetings law with the state's Uniform Information Practices Act. First up, we have testimony from Ms. Park, Office of Information Practices.
OIP fully supports this bill, which we worked with Public First to develop, because what it does is it makes clear that if someone wants to challenge an opinion of OIP regarding the Sunshine Law, this is the process they're going to follow, which is consistent with the process that is used to challenge OIP's opinions under the UIPA, or Uniform Information Practices Act. So this brings consistency to this area. Without it, what happened is that the Supreme Court allowed a complaining party to sue OIP instead of the board that did the alleged Sunshine Law violation, which is like suing a court instead of the party who the court had found, in this case, had not violated the law. It makes no sense. So this would correct that problem. And again, as I said before, it would be consistent with what is in the UIPA's appeal processes to appeal OIP decisions. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaii Chapter Society of Professional Journalists in support. Next, we have testimony from the Public First Law Center in support.
Good afternoon, Ben Krebs for the Public First Law Center. We strongly support this bill. It would promote compliance with the Sunshine Law and ensure that OIP serves its intended role in several ways that are outlined more fully in our written testimony. And I would also note that with the companion measure in the Senate, there seemed to be some confusion about the statute of limitations, and I would respectfully direct this committee's attention to the testimony of OIP, the written testimony where they explain the statute of limitations issue in more detail. But again, we strongly support this measure, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1597? If not, questions, members? Questions? Seeing none, thanks very much. Let's move on to the next measure. House Bill 1598, relating to the Sunshine Law. This measure establishes that board packets shall be made available for public inspection no later than 2 business days rather than 48 hours before a board meeting. It clarifies that public testimony may be submitted to the board before the meeting. First up, we have testimony from Ms. Park, Office of Information Practices.
I'm going to stand on my written testimony that also pointed out an unintended consequence might be that boards have less time to prepare the board packets. That could be a problem, but we're neutral on this bill and the following 2 bills. So I'm going to stand right now on that testimony
Okay.
as well.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Public First Law Center. Mr. Krebs, welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Ben Krebs for the Public First Law Center. We also strongly support this bill. It proposes 2 modest tweaks to the board packet provision that promote informed public participation and also informed participation of the board members. It first clarifies that testimony submitted within 48 hours of a board meeting can still be provided to the board, and currently the existing law is being interpreted as prohibiting that. So this would allow the board to get that late testimony before the actual meeting. And it also ensures that board packets are made available at least 2 business days before a meeting, which is a real, small and reasonable measure. And it both assists the public in getting this information and also the boards who have enough time to digest the materials. Available for any questions.
Great, thank you. We have also received written testimony and support from Animal Rights Hawaii, from Unite Here Local 5, and from the Hawaii Chapter Society of Professional Journalists. Unite Here Local 5 provided comments. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1598? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Next, we have House Bill 1599 relating to the Sunshine Law. This measure requires public meeting notices to inform members of the public how to provide remote oral testimony in a manner that allows the testifier, upon request, to be visible to board members and other meeting participants. First up, we have testimony from the State of Hawaii Employee Union Benefits Trust Fund in support. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Information Practices, which Director Park said she would stand on her written testimony with comments. Next, we have testimony and support from the Public First Law Center. Mr. Krebs.
Good afternoon, Ben Krebs again for the Public First Law Center. This is another bill we strongly support. Being able to see each other is critical to civil discourse, and this bill promotes civil discourse by requiring boards conducting remote meetings to provide testifiers with the option to be heard and seen. We strongly support this bill, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony and support from Greg Misakian. Please proceed, sir.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I support HB 1599, and obviously we're doing what I think the bill would support right now at this committee hearing, so I strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've received written testimony and support from Luann Mahiki Langford Favorito and from Kathy Gogol. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1599? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. House Bill 1600 relating to open meetings. This measure requires that a board may only schedule a meeting for discussion and decision-making on a report by an investigative group 6 days after the investigative group has made a report of its findings to the board. First up, we have Director Park, Office of Information Practices. Next, we have testimony from the Public First Law Center. Mr. Krebs, please proceed.
Good afternoon again, Ben Krebs for the Public First Law Center. We strongly support this bill. The permitted interaction groups allow boards to conduct their business efficiently at the expense of public participation. So this bill ensures a proper balance between those two interests by slowing down the process just a bit to allow sufficient time for the public to understand the activities and the decisions being made based on the permitted interactions work, and also participate in the subsequent discussions on that activity. Available for any questions.
Thank you very much. And we've received written testimony and support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1600? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Next up, House Bill 2804 relating to noise. This measure increases penalty fines for violations of leaf blower restrictions, removes the exemption for government entities and their agents from leaf blower restrictions. Beginning July 1, 2027, prohibits the sale of any leaf blower or string trimmer that is rated by its manufacturer at greater than 70 decibels when measured at a distance of 50 feet. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Education. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Health. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you. Gabrielle Phoenix Grange. I manage the Indoor Air and Radiological Health Branch in the Environmental Health Services Division, and we have a noise program there that covers this. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. This measure may impact priorities identified in the governor's executive budget. The proposed requirements will require additional staff and funding. The department respectfully comments on this measure that proposes to increase penalties, repeal the exemption of government agencies, and prohibits the sale of leaf blowers and string trimmers that are rated by their manufacturers at greater than 70 decibels when measured at a distance of 50 feet. We very much appreciate the intent of the bill in addressing sound emissions from leaf blowers and string trimmers and favor a quieter environment. Any new mandate, depending on implementation, may require additional resources for effective enforcement. The intent of our noise statute, 342F, was to regulate sources that were generally in one place or constant in nature and can be feasibly enforced. Enforcement against leaf blowers and string trimmers by the department continues to be extremely difficult due to their mobility and duration of use, and documenting a violation is improbable due to our lack of immediate response capability. Several municipalities throughout the nation refer to the ANSI standard B175.2, which has a maximum noise level of 65 decibels for Class 1 equipment and 70 decibels for Class 2 equipment, measured at 50 feet, to regulate noise emissions from handheld and backpack gasoline-powered leaf blowers. Enforcement is performed in these other jurisdictions, generally by the local police departments. Prohibiting the sale of leaf blowers which do not meet this standard will lead to a gradual decline in the equipment as they begin to fail. Restricting usage to the ANSI-rated equipment would have an immediate impact, but would also require the regulating entity to develop an inspection and certification program where users may have their equipment tested and certified to meet the standard. Implementation of such a program will likely require additional personnel and equipment appropriations. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify on this.
Certainly. Thank you very much for being here and providing testimony. Next, we have written testimony and support from the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, written testimony in opposition from the Honolulu Department of Parks and Recreation, and testimony and support from three individuals, Kathy Gogle, Terry Welch, and B.A. McClintock, and we have testimony and support from Ted Bolin. Please proceed, Mr. Bolin.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and member. Ted Bolin on behalf of myself. I am in strong support of this bill. There was a previous version, there have been previous versions of bills like this that were preempted because they were dealing with fuel type with gas. This is just dealing with noise. There were also concerns expressed by the Department of Health about bills that would require regulation of operations. So this bill only requires sales in the future, which I think is really minimal impact on the department. I disagree with my old clients that there will be additional need for resources on this. It's just talking about sales 3 years hence. After that, I don't think they will need additional resources. Obviously, the department speaks for itself, and we might disagree on some things. Noise is a pollutant. I used to do water pollution, and this is a different type of pollutant that's less recognized, but noise can affect health in various ways that I address in my testimony. There are viable options already, both gas and electric, especially electric and some gas, for leaf blowers that make less noise, and they're improving all the time. So by 2027, there will be more options. As I said, the bill does not restrict usage. It only restricts sales, and it is not preempted as the other bills were. I would recommend a couple of amendments. First, as the Department of Health mentioned, there is an American National Standards Institute B175.2 Class 1 of 65 weighted decibels. And this is a technical point, but the bill as drafted says decibels. Weighted decibels is a better measure because it reflects what the human ear actually hears, which is less at the high and low end of the frequencies that people perceive. So on page 2 of line 20, it should read, at greater than 65 weighted decibels when measured at a distance of 50 feet. I did see one piece of testimony expressing concern from another government agency. I would have no objection if the committee were so inclined to delete the exemption for government agencies. Not important to me. But this bill, which is not preempted, does not affect operations. It's a reasonable approach trying to move the market in the future, and I strongly urge the committee to adopt this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 2804? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. House Bill 2466. Relating to public land liability, this measure abolishes the Task Force on Beach and Water Safety and the Risk Assessment Working Group. It requires the design and placement of warning signs, devices, and systems to be approved by the chairperson of the Board of Land and Natural Resources for state beach parks and the county mayors for county beach parks. First up, we have testimony from Kurt Cottrell, DLNR. Welcome, sir. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator for the Division of State Parks. We stand in strong support on our written testimony, but I will offer just a few clarifying comments for context. So Act 190 was promulgated 27 years ago, and it was primarily the result of an increase in spinal cord and beach injuries and the exposure of liability to the state and county for those injuries. And it came up with a methodology and assigned design system and the task force to approve the design of the signs and also their placement. And then Act 82, which was promulgated 21 years ago, was the direct result of the tragedy at Sacred Falls, where 8 individuals perished. And Act 82 set up the Risk Assessment Working Group, which was patterned closely on the Task Force of Beach and Ocean Safety. In addition, Act 82, with the help of Mr. Toyofuku, who assisted the department, we promulgated Hawaii administrative rules that further clarify the design and placement and the methodology by which the signs would be placed for parks and trails. So there are 2 disparate acts that have the same intent, which is essentially to fulfill the government's duty to warn. They're both modeled on pictograph standards. The Act 82 signs were actually modeled off ANSI workplace standards. So minimum language, use of graphics for multilingual people to understand the risk. And I also want to add that both these acts were promulgated before cell phones existed. And so in addition to signage, there is a wealth of information available on websites, further drilling into what type of natural hazards the public would be exposed to on beaches and parks and trails. The one thing I do want to point out that I think is the essential element is we're not creating a lot of new beach parks, trails, or state parks. So Our staff for the past decade plus have been simply replacing the existing warning signs as they reach a certain lifespan and their legibility is compromised. And under the Act, there's a condition that our staff have to inspect, like the Act 82 signs, I think it's every 180 days, make an assessment. And we keep records of all that. So at this point, to stand up two groups to simply approve where signs are located is really unnecessary. And it's a very daunting assemblage of two groups, and it was an unfunded mandate. And further, current leadership at DLNR feels it's inappropriate that our land board approve signs that have liability protection for the counties. They feel that should be a function of the county. So back in the day when these were new, it totally made sense to have two groups guide both the state and county on what the signs should look like, where they should be placed with a variety of water experts, trail experts, sign experts, and whatnot. But now, since we're primarily in a maintenance and replacement phase, the groups are no longer necessary, in addition to the new tech that's available on phones to further provide that duty to warn. And thank you. We're in strong support, and I look forward to discussion if we go that way.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Evan Oy, Hawaii Association for Justice. Please proceed.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oy on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We respectfully stand in opposition to this measure. Primarily, HAJ's position on this is that elimination of the task force and the working group, pose a threat to public safety. And the primary reason behind that is because the groups were put in place to have expert review and consultation for the board and, to provide adequate signage in order to protect the public. We would feel as though this may pose a risk if those, there's no continued expert review, and by allowing the chairperson of the BLNR or the mayors to make a county determination, they may not have the expertise, and we feel as though it's probably better to have the group still in place in order to provide that level of expertise to make sure that future determination on signs is reviewed and they're adequately placed and in the right positions with the right sizing and everything. So we respectfully oppose this measure, and we would like to see the groups continue at this time. So thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, for the time, and we'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Jessamy Town Horner. Members, I refer you to her testimony. And finally, testimony, and it's in opposition. And finally, testimony from Sarah Fairchild, also in opposition. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2466? If not, questions, members? Vice Chair Takayama, please proceed.
A question for Mr. Cottrell.
Certainly.
DLNR. You mentioned in your testimony that there's a wealth of opportunity for us to use cell phones and new technology to issue warnings to visitors and residents alike. How does DLNR use this new technology?
That's a really good point. Well, first and foremost, the users entering, say, a state park have access to our website information via their phone, and the park unit they'd be entering, the warnings that we would have on the signage at the trailhead or at the park boundary would also be available, for example, on our website for them to do, to look and see. And Forestry and Wildlife have the same capacity for the trail program. I'm not certain, and what makes this tricky is we have two different things. We have the beach warning signs, which are slightly different, and the trail and park signs. But like, for example, we all get, a lot of us have opportunity to get alerts when there's flash flood warnings from the National Weather Service, and our phones go off. And that technology wasn't available 21 years ago when we were standing up, this process. I do want to point out that this will not provide a reduction in public safety. In fact, when we started this, we did need the assistance of water safety personnel and trail design people, but the staff of both the state and county are now their own experts because we've institutionalized the locations and the information. And on the rare chance that, say, state parks would need to set up new beach warning signs, we could directly consult with the counties now, pull up a water safety officers, go and make that determination. But what we're really saying is we feel that the limited immunity is warranted given the institutionalized nature of this process. We're not putting up new signs all over the place. We're just simply maintaining. So I do not agree that there would be any net reduction. In fact, due to the tech that I've mentioned, I think the users as better informed as they could possibly be before they seek an experience.
So did I hear you say that as far as beach sites are concerned, you do provide updates as to beach conditions, you know, wave
The county
dangers,
does.
that sort of thing?
The county water safety folks do. I know Oahu Ocean Safety, they have a full-on website that people can go to that has state-of-the-art daily beach conditions. And for example, for our beach parks, say Ke'awa'ula on the west side, we have county lifeguards there that we contract. When there's a mean swell coming in, they notify our superintendents and we close the park. So we have better communication with our first responders who are the experts on the hazards now, and then we can take precautionary measures such as just closing down our state beach parks. And the counties follow suit. Happens when there's sharks as well. We shut down the park units.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cottrell. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. We just were informed that Ms. Jessamy Town Horner is now available on Zoom. Ms. Horner, please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you all for having me today. I did write written testimony, which I stand on, but I did want to at least offer some spoken comments. You know, I did testify in one of the hearings already. I know Kurt Cottrell knows me as well, but I'm here both primarily in a personal capacity. I've been doing ocean advocacy for 7 years now. I'm the coordinator for the Water Safety Coalition. We were just there this week at the Capitol for Water Safety Day. I'm here in strong opposition to this bill. I believe that we need to have an expert task force to review and improve messaging and oversight, including updated technology. I am familiar with the Ocean Safety website. It is not up to date. I think we could have a much better solution to that. My main thing that I wanted to share is that I lost my husband and daughter at the Makapu tide pools 7 years ago because there was no proper protocol in place for live conditions, closures. Perhaps it was because the task force was not meeting. I do know that Ocean Safety and DLNR knew about an offshore storm. Rogues that came in, there was no way they could have known by the signage alone. It should have been closed that day, and there have been other days where it should have been closed as well. I think there's, again, not an ongoing protocol for that. Perhaps there needs to be funding to properly implement this oversight or have it moved to the Department of Health, Injury Prevention Branch. But I'm here to testify that in all of my discussions over the last 7 years, not enough is being done, and I would ask you to consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you providing your testimony. Again, is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, we'll go back to questions. Any questions? I have a question, Mr. Cottrell. I wanted to follow up with you. You know, the testimony from Ms. Horner is very compelling, and I must say I worry about us not doing everything we can do to warn the public. We have both a responsibility to protect the public and to protect the state, to make sure that we, you know, are notifying people so that we're protected in case there's a lawsuit against us. So it seems like these days it's not just signs. So I understand that you haven't been meeting, these groups have not been meeting. Even if we do not pass this bill, they probably still won't meet. So I called the Attorney General and asked her about this, and she acknowledged my concern and offered to work with the department to go over your current signage plans and the, how to use the media, social media, how to use websites, and make sure that you are up to speed. Have you been, when was the last time that you worked with the Attorney General on these matters? Because, of course, they are the ones that are also trying to protect the state and protect the public.
The last time, actually, I interfaced with the AGs on this issue was in fact due to litigation to a personal injury suit and the determination of if the signs were in the right location and placement. So since then, like I said, we're just replacing and maintaining the existing signage. And I feel for Ms. Horner, that was a terrible, terrible tragedy. We did have warning signs at the top, and I want to point out Makapu Tide Pools is not an authorized hike. We don't promote it. We do have signs saying there's dangers to it, but there's no infrastructure or management to go down to those tide pools. But we can't stop people, from going down. We do talk to Ocean Safety, and they let us know when there's some pretty significant threat. But at any given day, even at Makapu, a rogue wave could pose a threat, and the rest of the time it's okay. But I agree that we maybe need a group of experts, but I think the way this is set up now is antiquated. And I like the idea of having it migrate to the Department of Health, because rather than have, and the groups are comprised of like the chair of the board, the head of DBED, the head of oceanography, 4 people appointed by the governor, each of whom shall publicly be employed water safety personnel. And then for the risk assessment working group, the chair of the board, the mayors of the county, the administrators of forestry and wildlife and state parks, the attorney general, and a person who's knowledgeable in signage. Those are big, powerful groups to set up simply to determine where signs should go. I agree. I think we need a more nimble, modernized approach, because we support and need greater public safety, particularly because the users, also due to social media, are going out of bounds in ever greater numbers than before. And that's an uncontrollable kind of pandemic of recreational use, which forces us to keep putting up closed area signs simply to protect ourselves.
Yeah. I appreciate that you're open to some of these other approaches. I acknowledge that it is an antiquated design for these working groups, but I'm skeptical about just repealing everything without something in its place that would provide that expert testimony to you, that provide expert advice to you, and also to look at how do we use apps and things like that to be able to alert the public, even in areas that aren't official trails, right? They're just parts of the coastline. So I appreciate that you're open to that.
Oh, no, we totally agree. It's just the formation of it as it is now that's really cumbersome and antiquated, and we could do better.
Yeah.
And it would be a collaborative effort between the state and counties, I think.
Yes, understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And the Attorney General did say that she would be very willing to work with you on that and this effort to take a look at it, and then, if she said if the legislature chooses not to move this forward, that they could work with you to come back next session with a bill that would try to create something that's more nimble, more targeted, address the issues that you're working on, but still make sure the state is protected and that we protect the public. So it'll be up to the committee, but I appreciate your willingness to look at this. I just remember we've seen the same bill year after year.
A couple times, yeah. Not as frequently as the lifeguard bill. This one's only had a few passes.
Well, when I was Chair Water Land, I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
That was some time ago, but
Yeah.
anyway. Okay, any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much,
All right,
Mr.
thank you,
Cottrell.
committee.
Let's move on to the next measure, House Bill 2471, relating to inspections on public land. This measure establishes a statutory framework for inspections of public land leases, licenses, and revocable permits by the Department of Land and Natural Resources. First up, we have testimony from Kevin Moore, DLNR. Welcome, sir. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Member Kevin Moore, Land Division. The department supports this administration measure, which would basically give us an additional tool in lease management. It would allow us to procure third-party inspectors at a lessee's expense to take a close look at properties every 5 years. The inspectors would prepare a report, and if deficiencies were found, they would, the lessees would be required to, fix those problems. And if they refuse to do so, the ultimate penalty might be cancellation of the disposition by the landlord. Available for any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, we also have available Mr. Russell Suji for questions. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 2471? If not, questions, members? I have a question, Mr. Moore. According to your testimony, and my memory serves me correct, that this is actually following up on recommendations of the House Investigative Committee from House Resolution 164 from the 2021 session. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so this would enable you to be able to, this will enable you to contract with those third-party inspectors as we had discussed from the investigative group.
That's right. And a lot of, as we also note in our testimony, a lot of our land agents, they're typically not licensed professionals like contractors or engineers or architects. So we'd have the inspections done by somebody with the appropriate skill level. And one of the ultimate purposes of this is to make sure we don't end up with improvements at the end of a long-term lease that are not usable, and especially that would have to be torn down at state expense.
Yes, yes. Great. Well, I appreciate your responsiveness to the recommendations of the committee, and that this bill is a result of that. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much to the testifiers. Let's move on. Next, we have House Bill 2479 relating to the taking of marine deposits. This measure authorizes the Department of Land and Natural Resources to approve permits for research, education, management, or propagation purposes that include the taking of sand, dead coral, coral rubble, rocks, soil, and other marine deposits seaward of the shoreline. On this measure, we have first up Department of Land and Natural Resources. Mr. Nielsen, thank you. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Nielsen on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand in support of this measure. This is an administrative bill. Basically, we're just trying to add a provision to allow the take of mineral deposits, sand from the beach in order to perform research. Right now, if a researcher wants to go down to the beach and collect some sand or some rubble to look at the biological organisms, contaminants, geology, technically that's illegal. So we want to add a provision to allow this type of research to be permitted under our special activity permit process, and that would still go through biological review by our biologists and issue a permit for these activities. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Mr. Nielsen, just really briefly. So just to confirm that if we were to move this, if this bill were to be approved by the legislature and someone wanted to take samples of sand for research purposes, they would still have to get a special activity permit.
Correct. They'd still need a special activity permit, still go through a process that evaluates, what they want to do, how much they want to take, where they want to take it from. That process is all in place and would be applied to this.
Okay, and then if somebody, there's lots of folks out there that are wanting to, you mentioned for propagation purposes, but this is not for live coral.
No, this is for dead, could apply to dead coral,
Okay.
but not live coral. Live coral would fall under our special activity permit. We are authorized to permit research on live coral currently.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, thanks very much, Mr. Nielsen. Let's move on to the next measure. House Bill 1546 relating to restoration of beach lands. This amends the definition of beach restoration used in laws governing the Board of Land and Natural Resources powers to engage in beach restoration to include activities undertaken to maintain and improve eroded beaches and degraded dune systems, and to remove abandoned and remnant man-made materials that pose a risk to the health of the public and ecosystem. First up, we have testimony from Michael Kane, DLNR. We have an all-star cast here from DLNR. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're all here. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Committee Member Michael Kane on behalf of DLNR. We stand in our testimony in support. And I would note that we have read the testimony, the written testimony, and I'll be reaching out to some of these people. There seems to be a perception that this would limit in some ways our ability to invest in larger projects that involve engineered structures. I think I need to assure some of them that those projects are still moving forward. We see this as a bill that would help us invest in smaller projects, community-based projects that engage in dune restoration and more rural, less high-profile projects.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Dr. Chip Fletcher, University of Hawaii. We have testimony, and that's in support. We have testimony with comments from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, and testimony in opposition from Hilton Grand Vacations, Kelly Ollinger, from Starn, O'Toole, Marcus, and Fisher, and then from Theodore Ratliff. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1546? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. House Bill 1856 HT1 relating to traffic regulation. This measure authorizes each county to adopt ordinances to regulate or restrict access to certain streets, highways, thoroughfares, or roads. First up, we have testimony from Mike Walker, Department of Land and Natural Resources. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. Anoai, Meke Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. My name is Michael Walker, and I serve as a statewide fire protection forester for the Department of Land and Natural Resources, and I'm here representing the Na'alahele program for testimony today. The department agrees that for vehicular purposes, the counties should have the flexibility to regulate their own roads, and we appreciate the commitment to consult with the department and conduct public hearings prior to approval. We'd like to add further comment that we'd like to remind folks that pedestrian access across such roads should be exempt from this legislation. Pedestrian access is a constitutional right to public lands, waters, and other resources, as well as Kuleana lands. And pedestrian access, such as like on any other public lands, is conducted at the user's own risk. And if there's any extreme danger that could pose a hazard to pedestrian access, the closure or restriction should be implemented through the emergency proclamation process as the law currently allows.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have testimony from Hawaii County Council Chair Heather Kimball. Please proceed. Chair Kimball.
Aloha, good afternoon, Chair Tarnas and members of the Judiciary Committee. Just here asking for your support today in moving this legislation forward. The genesis of this piece of legislation was the 4 years that I've been working with the Waipio Valley community to come up with a solution to the overloved aspects of this particular location, where we have a road that is particularly dangerous, and prior to the pandemic, as many as 500 cars a day and a number of pedestrians utilizing this roadway. Presenting a real public safety hazard, having the ability to engage in a management plan that is developed through ordinance with the feedback of the community will allow us to protect the space as well as ensure safety along this roadway that was conveyed to the county. Now, we understand the importance of public access and the importance of maintaining the rights to access for the majority of the public. So we're more than willing to accept any amendments that further constrain this process. This is not something we're looking at wielding broadly. It's really just narrow in focus where public safety is an issue and that we're looking at either environmentally or culturally sensitive areas. So I encourage the body to suggest any amendments that would make this comfortable for everyone, but ask desperately for your support for a tool that we can use at the counties to the benefit of our communities. Thank you for hearing my testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We received written testimony and support from Councilmember Bulosan from Hawai'i, testimony and support from Maui County Council Chair Lee, and also we have testimony on Zoom from the Hawaii State Association of Counties, Naheilani Parsons, not present, in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1856? Seeing none, questions, members? Any questions? If not, thank you very much to the testifiers. Let's move on to the next measure. House Bill 2505 relating to land use. This measure increases the fines for violations of land use laws, imposes enhanced fines for developers and owners of important agricultural lands who repeatedly use the lands for unintended purposes. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Dexter Kishida, Deputy at Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The department stands on our comments. Important ag lands, the department knows we need ag lands, and we need to keep them sacred. But, we have a few kind of questions or thoughts on this, is that we haven't come across or heard of any violations to date. Part of the reason is some of the important ag land process is being taken up by land use and at the city and county, et cetera, to designate the remainder of the lands. And the larger parcels or the larger landowners that have designated usually don't fall into these issues. So the department, again, stands on comments, but we haven't seen extensive issues with violations in important ag lands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Michael Walker, Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Walker. I serve as the statewide fire protection forester for Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Forestry and Wildlife. The department stands on its written testimony in support of this measure, and we just want to say that over 25% of the lands in the state are covered by invasive fire-prone grasses, and many of these lands are also agricultural lands, and making sure that folks that are on these lands are managing these lands appropriately, keeping them in agricultural use. And if folks are not, then they should be fined accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii Farm Bureau, testimony and support from Leah Goker, and testimony and support from Luann Mahiki Langford's Favorito. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 2505? Not questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. House Bill 2278 relating to labeling of macadamia nuts. This measure clarifies labeling requirements for macadamia nuts, requires the country of origin to be included on the principal display panel of a consumer package of raw or processed macadamia nuts. First up, we have testimony from the Attorney General. Welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Travis Moon providing comments. We provided comments in our written testimony, providing that the Federal Agricultural Marketing Act preempts state country of origin labeling on raw macadamia nuts, and we recommended certain revisions on the bill to avoid such a preemption issue. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have written testimony and support from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you again, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Dexter Kishida, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand on our testimony and support and do defer to the Attorney General's office on some of the specifics of changes. We are requesting a full-time inspector, though, to assist in this, should this move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaiian Host Group. Please come on up, introduce yourself.
Merle Alvarado with the Hawaiian Host Group. I oppose HB 2278. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. This year I'm celebrating my 38th anniversary at Mauna Loa. I am second generation in my family that works for the Hawaiian macadamia nut industry. My mom worked outside in the macadamia nut orchards as a hand harvester. I have worked side by side with many employees who have been with our company for many decades. As a matter of fact, one of them is going to celebrate his 50th anniversary this year. Together, we have made Mauna Loa a company that the community is proud of. For example, we have supported the Merry Monarch Royal Parade in Hilo for many decades, and we hope to do this for long into the future. This bill is focused on just the farmers and the growers, with no operational flexibility for nut processing and food manufacturing businesses like ours. Local jobs will disappear because of this. It is ironic that some of the parties that are pushing for this bill have their own macadamia nut processed in China. Those macadamia nuts were previously processed at Mauna Loa, and the range of jobs that left our facility because of this. It does not help the Hawaiian macadamia nut industry. I have been fortunate to have worked both in quality assurance and in the processing departments over the years. That's how I can attest that before the growers started processing in China, their Hawaiian kernel was cheaper and better in quality than today. It is the main reason why we could no longer rely solely on the Hawaiian kernel. We would like to work with the growers and the Department of Agriculture to find a solution that ensures Hawaiian macadamia nuts that are grown here are processed here. Otherwise, the labeling of 100% Hawaiian kernel doesn't make sense. We have been working hard on growing the Hawaiian macadamia nut industry at large. That's the legacy I want my grandbabies to remember me for, not the fight about this labeling. Mahalo for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Alvarado. Appreciate it. Next, we have testimony from Andrew Trump, Island Harvest Inc. Welcome. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. My name is Andrew Trump. I'm a second-generation farmer from Hawai'i Island, and I'm here to support this bill. I want to stand on my written testimony, make myself available for questions afterwards, and then I just also want to add a few comments. So Hawaii mac nut farmers are facing some of the most difficult times they have in decades, maybe ever since the inception of the industry. Between the decrease in utilized production and the decrease in prices from 2021 and 2022, we've seen nearly half of the economic value of Hawaii macadamia nuts be wiped out. It's putting farmers in a place where many are uncertain or have already given up and don't see a future for Hawaii-grown macadamia nuts. This bill is really here with the intent to be able to, for farmers and Hawaii-grown macadamia nuts to be able to distinguish itself on the shelves of our supermarkets and for consumers. And without that distinguishing, foreign kernel is coming in and muddling the markets and deceiving customers from being able to distinguish between what's foreign and what's Hawaiian grown. So as a farmer, I'm not opposed to foreign nuts being sold on our supermarket shelves. Like, that's not what the intent of this bill is. It just needs to be labeled, and so that we can see what's Hawaiian grown and what's not. I think it's as simple as that, and I just want to offer that and make myself available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Mr. Schultz from Hawaiian Host Group on Zoom. Please proceed, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. My name is Ed Schultz. I'm the president and CEO of Hawaiian Host Group, the owner of Mauna Loa, and I oppose this bill. Last year I testified and stated that we understood the concerns of growers and would do more to help the industry. And I'm proud to say we've done that. In April last year, we invested over $25 million to acquire a mac nut processing facility in South Kona that was owned by a foreign investment group. We've also convened a working group that included growers and processors to work on a new co-op facility for the Big Island. This issue affecting Hawaiian macadamia industry is a lack of processing capacity, and that is what we need to fix in order to make the industry thrive. This bill is a special interest bill. They'll be used by growers to increase prices And we just don't believe that's the job of the legislature. At Hawaiian Host Group, we're purchasing all the nuts we can find on the island that people are willing to sell to us at a 35% premium to Australia's 2023 price. This is a significant premium in a very competitive retail landscape that goes across 50 states, not just Hawaii. Australia is a first world grower of macadamia nuts and not a low-cost place to operate. Hawaii must be competitive with Australia pricing, as we cannot leverage a labeling bill to artificially set pricing. In addition, the cost of trying to comply with a labeling bill that we believe is very vague crosses the line on usages of long-held intellectual property and applies to interstate commerce does not justify a continual investment into growing the industry in Hawaii. It'll force us to evaluate investment outside of Hawaii, as 49 other states do not have this same labeling requirement. This is potential lost jobs, taxes, and investment in Hawaii. Before passing legislation that is a potential negative impact, more careful and cooperative discussion should be had. We know that once legislation is passed, it is rarely repealed, even if the impact is negative. At HHG, we invested more than anyone in the macadamia industry in Hawaii in the past 12 months than anyone over the past 30 years. We asked the committee to defer this bill until more discussions are had with all parties to find a private sector solution that will grow the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Hawaii Macadamia Nut Association.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. Nathan Trump with the Hawaii Macadamia Nut Association. Stand on my written testimony and am available for comments.
Could you summarize the highlights of your testimony, please?
Yeah, so in short, I think Hawaii's growers are really struggling. And although there has been some investment made, I just feel like there needs to be a distinguishing of Hawaii macadamia nuts and foreign grown macadamia nuts in the supermarket. And if nothing is done, that Hawaii's growers will suffer. And I believe it'll have a negative impact for both manufacturing and growing in Hawaii's industry. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Jeffrey Clark, Edmund C. Olson Trust. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this bill on labeling macadamia nuts. I am the president of Hamakua Macadamia Nut Company. We grow and process macadamia, 100% grown, Hawaii-grown macadamia nuts. We stand in strong support of this labeling bill. I just want to make a few comments summarizing our stance. As has been stated already, the farming of macadamia nut community here in Hawaii has been suffering over the last several years. Major driver of that, of course, is the importation of foreign kernel into the market and being marketed cleverly as Hawaiian. It's not clear to consumers what is Hawaii grown and what is foreign grown, and it creates a problem for the farmers here in Hawaii. There's been a little bit of work on with all of the growers and processors in the state, but there has not been an agreement on or a willingness to label product for what is foreign grown and what is Hawaii grown. Which clearly label coffee, and whether it's Kona, Ka'u, or any of the Hawaii origins. And there's rules against bringing in foreign coffee and labeling it as such, as one of the Hawaii regions. That's all we're asking is for the macadamia nut industry to have similar labeling laws to make sure that consumers know where their product is grown. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Members, we have written testimony from 176 individuals in support, 196 individuals in opposition, and 1 providing comments. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 2278? Please come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Aloha, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama and members of the committee. My name is Kamala Grace. I am the Executive Assistant at Hawaiian Host Group. I firmly stand on my written testimony opposing this bill. I really feel that we should be focusing and addressing the real issues in the macadamia nut industry. Solutions to resourcefully produce and process mac nuts here in the islands. I've seen firsthand the commitment that our company has to helping the industry flourish and extending far beyond our own business. I believe the vision of our leadership as they operate with the best intentions for our team and Hawaii at large. That's why I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Mr. Miyamoto, Hawaiian Farm Bureau. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. My apologies, Chair, trying to navigate between two hearings. Missed the last bill. You have a written testimony in support, and we will stand on that testimony in support. It is similar to the farmers. We are supporting the farmers. We want to protect our Hawaii brand, our macadamia nut farmers. So again, we stand on our written testimony in support, and my apologies again for missing the previous bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Miyamoto. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Mr. Trump, since you come on up, thanks for coming all the way over from Hawaii Island. I know that there's been continued discussions among members of the industry. Hawaii Mac Nut Association is the industry group. They're coming out in support, but Hawaiian Host, I think, is a member also, but one among many. I recognize what the sort of simple description that you want as a result of this bill. Do you feel like that the discussions that you're having with Hawaiian Host are making progress setting aside this bill? In addressing the issues that you've identified in the industry?
Yeah, so I think, I want to acknowledge that there have been industry-wide discussions that include everybody at the table, and that has provided some process, allowed the process to somewhat move forward, but a lot of times the farmers are hung up on, without the labeling and the assurance that we're going to be able to distinguish our product moving forward, it's hard to invest into things like processing. And so when we come to the table and discuss like a cooperative, which would be a great solution to some of our processing and marketing needs, the discussion these past few months oftentimes broke down around, is there a commitment to, labeling what is grown here moving forward? Because without that commitment, the farmers feel like they're kind of powerless. And without that commitment, do we know if there's going to be an industry in 5-10 years, and can we take the financial risk to be able to build a facility together? The farmers are the ones that can't take that risk without those assurances. So I think that's where it's kind of broken down. But I do want to acknowledge that we are trying, and we are trying to work together. But more needs to be done, and I see this labeling bill as a way to get more done.
Okay, thank you. Question for Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
I wanted to check in with you. This bill, as in very simple forms, is just to label if where the origin of the macadamia nuts. Is there any way that your company would be able to do that without you feeling like you've got to, reconsider your investment in Hawaii and move elsewhere?
Yes, I think, offline, we've had discussions, with leadership members at the Hawaii Mac Nut Association and with Brian at the Hawaii Farm Bureau. After the Consumer Protection Committee, we discussed, things that would be, that would start to move in that direction. I think one thing we got to clarify is that to us, we see, Hawaiian nuts is grown and processed. I mean, if we're shipping nuts to a foreign country that's known for counterfeiting, and then we're supposed to buy them back, that's a tough pill to swallow. And we're buying all the nuts that we can find. I think there is a pricing issue around the globe right now with macadamias, and we're offering as much of a premium as we can. So that being said, on the origin side, we've talked about where and how we would be comfortable with trying to disclose origin and an understanding. I think our main objection is, this idea of principal panel and percentages squarely on the front of every bag. This is very different than coffee. I was involved in coffee for over a decade here in Hawaii. And, you know, blends are a part of that industry. You disclose them because they show the artisan part of blending, and there's a purpose. And the other industry was labeling things 100% Kona coffee that had zero. And we're very careful not to be doing that today. We're using, you know, a third of the nuts grown here in Hawaii today in our packaged goods, and we continue to try and invest. So I think there is a solution here, but the labeling by percentage on front of panel is a challenge for somebody the size that we've grown to, as well as the number of employees we employ. And the FDA, we're not small like the coffee industry where we can put a hand label on something. We're large enough where the FDA expects us to have a fully pre-printed bag. And so it's difficult to print, you know, tens to hundreds of thousands of bags with specific percentages on there. So that's a lot of our main concern with operational flexibility. When you hear Ms. Alvarado and I talk about operational flexibility, we don't have a label printer that we can just switch, you know, the next batch is X percent to Y percent.
And you can't just put a range of, you know, percentages because it varies, but is that not something that you might be able to do?
Yeah, so I think in a country of origin disclosure, I think what you see others do, including Whole Foods, it'll say, you know, may contain nuts from Hawaii, you know, Australia, South Africa, and I think that's what provides the operational flexibility.
Okay.
But even like a retailer like Whole Foods is not in there, you know, saying on each bag what the percentage is, but they are disclosing the various origins that may be in there, so they don't have to reprint bags every time they might switch a blend.
Right, right. Last question, sir. Now, your company sells both in Hawaii as well as out of the state. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this would only apply. I mean, you were producing it here in the state, but what you produce here in the state, you actually export. And is it a lot of it, half of it? What do you export?
Yeah, it's half. I mean, if we break down to, I think we're doing about 52% of revenue here in Hawaii and 48% in 49 states and about 20 countries.
Got it.
And so if you go back to the original statute that we're in compliance with today, but if we just add this language onto the original statute, it specifically says that it is for interstate or intrastate and interstate commerce. So if we make it here in Hawaii, then, you know, we need to have the same label compliance if we're sending it to, you know, a grocery store in Florida.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have to say, as someone who's worked to try to develop a strategic plan for Hawaii Macadamia Nut Association many years ago, it's a challenging industry to get everyone to agree on something, from the producers to the processors, retailers, all the way through. I really commend you for continuing to try to work on this. Whatever we do with this bill, you've still got to keep working on this. So I commend you for continuing those discussions, and I hope that your leadership with Hawaiian Host, Hawaii Mac Nut Association, the farmers groups are successful, because this is an important industry to Hawaii. We all believe that. And legislature is not always the best ones to solve problems, but you know, there is a great deal of interest here in the House, the introducer of the bill, chair of the Consumer Protection Committee, to try to move forward. A lot of the issues that were brought up are consumer protection issues rather than judiciary issues. So I will try to have recommendations to this committee to address the judiciary-related issues, and then we'll go from there. So thank you to all the testifiers who testified on this measure today. Let's move on, unless there's more questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Thank you, Mr. Trump, and then thank you to Alvarado's for being here. Okay, let's move on to the final measure on our agenda today, House Bill 2067, relating to condominiums. This measure removes from the standard condominium proxy form the option of giving a proxy vote to the board of directors of a condominium association as a whole, or to directors present at the meeting. It requires a disclosure statement on the standard condominium proxy form informing unit owners that an association may direct elections by electronic machine or mail voting. First up, we have testimony from Philip Nerney. Welcome, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Philip Nerney. I'm testifying as an individual and not as the Chair of the Legislative Action Committee for CAI and not as the Chair of the Task Force on Condominium Property Regimes that the legislature appointed last year. This bill is a perennial bill, and it has as an intent and focus the effort to deprive people who are satisfied with their governance of the option of lending support to those governing incumbent board members. The finding of the legislature, the prior committee, says that allowing that existing practice may be exploited to enable existing officers of the board to continue to sit on the board. A couple of things about that. First of all, it's empirically unsupported. There are anecdotes. Beyond that, if that's true, that brings it into the purview of the Condominium Property Regime Task Force, which is to look at the fiduciary duties of directors. We very much have a concern about, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for myself. There is a concern not only about getting quorum, there is a concern about freedom of choice, there is a concern about consolidating power in individuals. Right now, you have to convince a board majority if you give your proxy to a board majority, or you can allocate your proxy to each director as a piece. That is a fair and fine system. The reason that there is constant attacks on this is to enable minority rule by activists. It has often been, I've heard, I was at the meeting and everyone supported me, but I didn't get elected, and that somehow that's unfair. People who are satisfied don't necessarily show up to these meetings. I hope you will defer this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Jane Sugimura, Hawaii Council of Associations of Apartment Owners. In opposition. Next, we have testimony from the Community Associations Institute, Dallas Walker. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Dallas Walker from CAI. We oppose this measure. When the association distributes proxies, what owners get is a proxy form with a list of the names of owners looking to solicit proxies and one-page statements of those owners' qualifications. And, you know, if you don't like any of the above or you don't know those people, you can choose to give your vote to the board. And having this choice is especially useful for people who, say, don't know their neighbors or don't know the people on the list, or who don't live on site. And, you know, they should be able to have this choice. And the nice thing about having this choice is it spreads their vote over a board of people or a group of people rather than concentrating the power in one individual, namely whoever solicits the most proxies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians. Mr. Gladstein, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, committee members just got off a plane from an actual removal proceeding where there was not one proxy given to the board of directors, and it was 98% represented where they did remove the board. So owners do have a choice, and they did exercise that choice in the Kona Magic Sands Association meeting just this morning. I do oppose this bill, and we oppose this bill as a committee. We did take some statistics from some of the larger management companies, which I've included in my testimony. We received a list of about 127 association meetings totaling over 15,000 units. And it appears that about 67 of them actually had a pre-meeting quorum, which means that they didn't have to sweat going out for additional mailings, going out to try to drag people out of their homes. Out of those 67, 59 of them wouldn't have even had a pre-meeting quorum without the board majority. What I think the proponents of this may not realize is that when you have meetings that don't have a majority or a quorum, okay, they either get continued or they get adjourned. And they still have a meeting. They still will call it to order. So it's not like a Chapter 92 type of meeting under Sunshine Law. What it is it's a Robert's Rules meeting, and it's under Chapter 514B, the Condominium Property Act. So what happens is they call the meeting to order. They've had a meeting, and they adjourn it. And even this evening, I'm going to a meeting out in Makaha where they may not have a quorum. If they adjourn it, the same board stays on, and we'll see you next year. So the idea that you can use this technique to take it away from the board is going to probably backfire. I know from the history of my practice, which is totaled 40 years, initially proxies were given to the president of the association, and he or she would basically control the outcome of the meeting. We did in the late 80s have proxies permitted for board majority, and they balanced it with board equal as well. The committee, the Blue Ribbon Commission that worked on 514B solicited comments from the community. We had representatives from the community stakeholders, and we did come to a decision that this was an acceptable balance. And we had a posting requirement, so owners were put on notice that there was going to be a distribution of proxies. They were given the right to make a choice, and this choice has existed for a couple of decades, several decades. So I just believe that we're looking into an area of unforeseen consequences, and I think you're going to find that there's a lot of people, if they're comfortable with their board, they'll give them a proxy, and if they're not comfortable, they'll do what they did this morning, and they won't give any proxies to any of the board members.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Dale Head. Please come on up, sir. Please, take your time.
Great. Pardon me if I read this. Aloha, Chairman Tornes, Vice Chair Takayama, and committee members. My name is Dale Head, and I do strongly support this bill. 5 years ago, I spoke to this committee and CPC requesting for elimination of proxies to the board. It was back in December of 2018, I had sent an email letter to House CPC and Senate CPN about the curious matter of frequent proxy abuse. That resulted in Senate Bill 724, which had 6 sponsors, and HB 347 from Speaker Psyche being introduced. This committee passed the bill under Chairman Chris Lee and CPC under Chair Roy Takubi. Then it was denied a hearing in our Senate. I and a few other people from various homeowner associations have performed forensic audits of proxies in different years on a post-election basis and confirmed how oftentimes property managers do secretly funnel proxy votes to incumbents on a board of directors, thereby ensuring they retain their seats. If not for this unseemly intervention, they would have been turned out of office and replaced by new people. This is a common intrigue and is manipulation, pure and simple. Theft, but is not prohibited by our statutes. In my opinion, this fits the federal definition of racketeering. When perpetrated, it also constitutes theft of services as the company is paid to administer the annual election. After residing in my Waianae condominium for about 3.5 decades, I sold it in September of 21 due to unstoppable corruption from 3 property management companies. And the last one had employees who even embezzled our HOA funds. Big bucks. Please defend democracy, election integrity, and transparency by approving this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Lourdes Scheibert. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair, and members of the committee to testify today. Our buildings have deteriorated under continued decades of the same leadership afforded by proxies to the board, whole and shared. Leadership has ignored the position of a director's first fiduciary responsibility to maintain and protect the building's infrastructure and its owners and residents. Mandates show the shortfall by veteran directors with deferred maintenance and artificially low reserves. The first, a 2005 study on the fire sprinkler, no action was taken. Several decades later, the city and county mandates a fire sprinkler system after Marco Polo's fire. At that time, 350 associations have hardship to financially meet the mandate, although in 2005, the condo industry leaders were aware to prepare the AOAOs. Secondly, today, a mandate for electrical maintenance standards. This component is absent from my reserve and has never been maintained. Hawai'i Building Trade has responded with the class on March 7th at the Blaisdell on this subject description. For 50 years, performance of the National Fire Protection Association standards for electrical prevention maintenance were merely a recommendation, but now compliance to a new standard approved by the American National Standard Institute is enforceable, and OSHA can issue citations for non-compliance. Second, the board utilizes assigned proxies to cast votes on resolutions aimed at modifying project documents and changes to the common area. According to my documents, the directors do not possess the authority to vote with proxies during the annual meeting in order to pass a resolution for changes. In order to make changes to the project documents or the use of common areas, it is necessary to obtain the owner's signature on the resolution. Specifically, a minimum of 67% of owners' signatures required for these changes to approve. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify, and I stand on my written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Sandy Wong in opposition. Next, we have testimony from Lila Mower. Please proceed.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. I stand on my written testimony in strong support of House Bill 2067 and add these comments. For years, I've submitted data-driven arguments and studies to legislators. The data I supplied could be examined, reviewed, validated, and verified. Most of the data came from the state, DCCA, or third-party sources, such as the nation's largest mortgage lender. Please be wary of data or statistics that cannot be validated nor verified, as the data may be incorrect or even inauthentic. Years ago, in front of a legislative committee, a testifier said that 90% of association residents rated their association experience as good or very good. But I happen to know the full quotation, that 90% of residents rated their association as good or very good, 67%, or neutral, 23%. Similarly, we've heard from the association industry that mediations are successful, but a detailed review of 32 years of the DCCA's Hawaii Condominium Bulletin revealed that only 1/4 of the 897 reported mediation cases were settled, belying the unsubstantiated claim that mediations are successful. I personally have conducted over 10 election records reviews and participated in at least another 10. Association attorneys were involved in 3 of the cases I reviewed, and they could not refute my findings. Proxies cause inaccurate and unrepresentative election results. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 2067.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Lynn Matasau. Please proceed.
Thank you. This is sort of a one-way conversation I'm having with someone over the phone. Hawaii, we're screwed big time. The legislature wants to eliminate an owner's choice to select board equal on a proxy form. We'll never get a quorum without these 2 options. No quorum means no meeting, no election, and the current board remains in office for another year. No meeting means no adoption of a tax resolution, which provides that any excess of membership income over membership expenses for the tax year shall be applied against the subsequent tax year member assessments per the IRS. At least one condo is being audited and the IRS wants to see the resolution. If the resolution is not adopted, associations may be required to pay tax on income that would not otherwise be taxable. Maybe we could get the legislators to pay that tax. It's only fair. Quorum only won't help. If quorum only is greater than those present, there is no way to get a majority, even if everyone votes yes. No meeting, and the owners cannot express their opinions which could lead to adoption of amendments to the bylaws and declaration. Why are they doing this to us? Our condos are our homes. They are a big investment. This isn't fair. It's wrong. The legislators haven't considered the unintended consequences. Oh, wait. Hundreds of thousands of property owners, including legislators who own condos, will be hurt. Ole Pono. Who would have thought Hawaii would restrict voting? Please defer this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. And next we have Greg Misakian on Zoom. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Greg Misakian, and I currently serve as Second Vice President of the Kukua Council, Subdistrict 2 Vice Chair of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, and a Director on my Condominium Association's board. It's clear that there is abuse of proxies by association boards from the many condominium owners I have personally spoken with and the many meetings I have participated in where owners' concerns are shared. With HB 2067 HD1, the options for quorum purpose only and to give your proxy to an individual are both preserved. So please don't let others sway you with misinformation or double talk about an association not being able to establish quorum or assign proxies, some of which I just heard from previous testifiers. Additionally, I'm going to add something here. The issue with the mailings that go out, we don't even get information regarding qualifications for board members. We don't even know how many seats are open in my packet. I have it because we have our annual meeting coming up in March. I'm adding that to my comments that I've written down here. Proxy abuse is also going on at my condominium association in an extreme way with a rogue board president and other rogue board members following. They are doing whatever they can to obtain proxies to remain in power at our annual meeting in March and are engaged in a campaign saying and writing disparaging and untrue things about one board member who is raising concerns regarding misconduct and mismanagement with evidence. Defamation and slander is a tactic used to stay in power, and it seems to be widespread, as I have heard this from other condominium owners at other associations. You have received testimony from a group opposing this bill who often use boilerplate cut and paste testimony, and some who profit more from the chaos and mismanagement at associations. I counted 18 using the same wording, and I asked our legislators to count these 18 as one. The chair of the CPR task force, who often sues condominium owners, made it clear that he disagreed with the CPN committee's report and provided his opinion, not factual data. He testified first. I respectfully ask that you please pass HB 2067 HD1 and help over 1/3 of the population of Hawaii move in the right direction to more fair elections and voting. And I am available for questions and hope that if you do call on testifiers, that you call on both sides so we both have an opportunity to answer and respond to our legislators. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. In addition to those that have testified, members, we have written testimony from 16 individuals in support and 36 individuals in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Any questions? Seeing none, I want to thank all the testifiers on this measure and all the measures on our hearing agenda today. It's been a full agenda. Members, let's go. We will go right into decision making. Okay, up at the top of the agenda, House Bill 2582. I recommend that since House Bill 2460 HD1 is moving out of Water Land Committee to Finance, we'll let that move forward. It's slightly different than this measure. This measure, while it's currently focused broadly. I'm going to narrow the focus to just the water system. So I'm going to recommend we take the recommendations from the recommended amendments from the Office of Information Practices. In their testimony, they prepared this in consultation with the Board of Water Supply. We're going to correct in their draft the HRS section that it should be appropriate. 54-11 is the proper one. We'll add a few words to their subparagraph 2 where it would reads, such interference, attack, compromise, or incapacitation described in subsection 1. And we would say in paragraph 3, interference, attack, compromise, or incapacitation described in subsection 1. So basically, we're going to tightly focus this draft on the water supply critical infrastructure. We'll give it a try and try to move this forward. And then we'll make some technical amendments and defect the effective date to the year 3000. That's my recommendation. Pass HB 2582 with those amendments. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2582 with amendments, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Evslin?
Aye.
Representative Ganadin? Aye. Representative Holt? Excused. Representative Ichiyama? Aye. Representative Villagan? Aye. Representative Kong?
Aye.
Representative Miyake?
Aye.
Representative Souza excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next bill, House Bill 1597, relating to open meetings. I recommend we move this forward merely by defecting the effective date to the year 3000 for continued discussion. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1597 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Souza. Any members voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next measure, House Bill 1598. I recommend we move this forward with amendments, defecting the effective date to the year 3000 and adding that business day means any day excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and state or federal holidays as per HRS 11-1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1598 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 1599. I recommend we move this forward with amendments to defect the effective date to the year 3000 for continued discussions. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1598 with amendments.
1599.
I'm sorry. House Bill 1599 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 1600 relating to open meetings. I recommend we move this forward with amendments to defect the effective date to year 3000 for continued discussions. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1600 with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. On the next measure, I would like to move this forward with amendments. It would be all right, hold on a sec while I pull up. So on this measure, I'd like to move it forward with amendments, technical amendments, defecting the effective date to the year 3000. And I would like to change on page 2, line 20, to read at greater than 65 weighted decibels, parens, dBA, when measured at a distance of 50 feet. And move this forward with those amendments. Tech amendments, defect the effective date to 3000, and take the recommended amendment from Ted Boland's testimony. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2804 with amendments. Any reservations or noes?
Reservations.
Reservations for Representative Kong. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2466, perennial bill, well, not quite perennial. Often we see it here. I acknowledge it was passed out of Water Land Committee. I would like the department to do more work on this and come back with a recommended bill that really creates this new, more agile advisory group that could, and bring in the Attorney General and her expertise. Maybe you could even draft some of the people who helped you out years ago, like Mr. Toyofuku, to recommend, how you're going to put together some sort of advisory group that could help you move forward and address some of the new opportunities for using electronic media in addition just to the solid signs, and come back with a bill that would give more assurance to the legislature, to the public, that we're protecting the state and we're protecting the public, and providing that the mayors, have the responsibility for doing the things in the county park. So come back with a bill that's more focused on that. So I would recommend we defer this measure. Questions or concerns, members? If not, let's move on. House Bill 2471, and we'll see you again, Mr. Cottrell. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, House Bill 2471, I'd like to move this bill out with technical amendments. Already has a defective date, so it'll be an HD2 with technical amendments only. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2471 HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2479 HD1, I recommend we make some technical amendments. We'll move it out with an HD2. Questions or concerns, members? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2479 HD2. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 1546 HD1. Sorry, one moment. Yeah, so on this measure, House Bill 1546 HD1, I'd recommend we move this out as is. It already has a defective date. OCCL said that they would be meeting with the other testifiers to try to address their concerns. And so I will leave that to OCCL to work on that and clarify any language in here that needs to be clarified. So my recommendation is to move out HB 1546 HD1 as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 1546 HD1 passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 1856 HD1, I recommend that we move this out with the DLNR's amendments. Also, I want to make another amendment that would incorporate into the substantive portions of this measure a statement that's in the preamble that says, it is explicitly stated that properties exclusively accessible via these roadways shall remain accessible without undue impediment. It's stated in the preamble, but it's not actually in the substantive portions of the measure. So I would like to make the amendment to incorporate it into the substantive portions of the measure. That, in addition to the DLNR amendment regarding pedestrian access, are my recommendations. It has a defective date, so those, any questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote. 1856 HD1 with amendments.
Voting on House Bill 1856 HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2505 HD1. I'd like to move this forward as is for further consideration. It probably needs some additional work to define and focus the bill, but I'd like to give it a chance. So I'd like to move this forward as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2505 HD1 passing as is. Reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2278 HD1. I would like to move this out with amendments. I'd like to adopt the Attorney General's amendments. This is really the kuleana of the Judiciary Committee to make sure that we are in compliance and with federal law as well. The Consumer Protection Committee would like to see this move forward, as does the introducer. I will accommodate that by moving this forward with the Attorney General's amendments. I also want to incorporate into the committee report that the Department of Agriculture has requested $63,000, and 1 full-time equivalent position. And those are my recommendations. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2278 HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations? Reservations for Representative Miyake. Reservations as well for Representative Kong. Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. And I do encourage continued discussion in the industry. This bill may not survive, and I think we need to have continued discussion in the industry from all sides to try to find a solution. HB 2067, House Draft 1, relating to condominiums. I'd like to move this forward with technical amendments only. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Kong.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't realize, but it refers to condominiums, but I own a townhome, and it'll fall under the same category. So if I could have a conflict of interest on this
I don't know,
bill?
it sounds like you're part of a general class that's really much bigger than you, so.
Thank you
have
very
no
much.
conflict of interest.
Okay.
It seems to be a third of the state lives in condos and townhouses, so
Yeah,
you're among a big group, sir.
Okay, good. And I also would be voting no on this because things can happen in the townhome that, well, our association, that works. So I have no problems with it, so we'll be
Great.
voting no.
No conflict of interest, and please go ahead and vote. Any other questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2067 HD1 with further amendments, noting the no vote of Representative Kong. Any other reservations or noes? Recommendations adopted.
Thank you. There being no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.